Welcome everybody to the wonderful world of export controls. So first thing is, why should you sit up and pay attention to this? Why is this important? Here's a few reasons. There are probably a lot more, but here's some of the major ones. There are a lot of things that are sent out of the United States that are subject to export controls in one way or another. And those roles, typically the government agencies that enforce export controls do so very strictly. So if there's a question, is this subject to controls or is it not, they're likely to err on the side of yes, they are subject to export controls unless you could show otherwise. And failure to have a right license at the right time, deal killer. What I mean by that is, got a contract to sell products to a foreign customer, you don't have, and if that product is subject to an export license or some other export control requirement, you cannot ship, you cannot export until such time as all the necessary approvals are in place. So failure to have a license means you can't export. They don't care if you're in breach of contract, if you're late on deliveries, it doesn't make any difference. You don't have a license, no deal. Export violations, over the last several years, there have been some tremendous export penalties dished out. And what I mean by that is penalties in the tens or even hundreds of millions of dollars assessed against companies that violated the rules. There have also been individuals, officers and employees of exporting companies who've been subject to penalties against them personally. So important for that reason. And if you're the person who failed to get the right license at the right time or violated one of the export control rules, that could jeopardize your job and your career. So there's another reason to pay attention. And bottom line on there, you may be surprised by what is controlled. There are a lot of things that are controlled, not necessarily just high-tech things or military things. Many things are controlled. You need to check it out first to make sure that the item you're planning to export or even the technology you're planning to export or share with a foreign person is not subject to export controls. A lot of different reasons why things are controlled for export. This is the short list of reasons why things are controlled for export. A lot of these make perfect sense. National security, anti-terrorism, regional stability. In other words, we don't want to give some special capability to a country in a certain area where they may go out there and harass their neighbors. Human rights, obviously, we don't want to violate people's human rights. Missile technology, very, very critical, as is our chemical and biological weapons. We want to control who has access to that type of equipment and that type of technology. So this is a short list of export controls, and be aware that these are not just for the United States. There are many other countries around the world that also have export controls. In fact, the U.S. belongs to several international agreements where we share export controls with other countries. So whatever prevails here will prevail elsewhere as well. One thing that the export control reform did is different agencies put their heads together, looked at the U.S. munitions list, USML categories in the ITAR, and they looked at the categories to say, okay, let's better define exactly what we want to control so that it's clearer to someone reading the regulations, yes, this product is subject to ITAR controls, or no, it's not subject to ITAR controls. Another major initiative was to move articles, especially parts and components, from the ITAR to the Commerce Control List, which you're going to be hearing more about shortly, in the Export Administration Regulations of the Department of Commerce, Bureau of Industry and Security. So they changed the jurisdiction, licensing jurisdiction of a number of things, especially at the part and component levels. And another thing is, between the Department of State DDTC ITAR regulations and the Bureau of Industry and Security Export Administration Regulations, there are a lot of definitions and terms used there. So they put their heads together on that one and said, let's try to come up with some common definitions for what do we mean by export, what do we mean by technical data, et cetera, and work on some common definitions. So that was another goal of export control reform. A lot is still going on. Okay, so as a result of export control reform, a lot of things have moved from the ITAR to the Commerce Control List, CCL. So instead of going to the Department of State Director of Defense Trade Controls to go get a license to export something, many companies now go to the Department of Commerce, Bureau of Industry and Security to get a license. So it's a different agency you go to get a license for the thing to be exported. And this has caused a major cultural change within the land of export controls. Sometimes there's some uncertainty about the thing to be exported. Company wants to export a part of a military aircraft, and they're not sure, is this subject to ITAR controls or EAR controls? You can actually write to the government, actually you write to Director of Defense Trade Controls, and ask for what's called a commodity jurisdiction. DDTC will then share your request with Department of Defense and the Department of Commerce. They'll get together and decide between them how that product is controlled for export purposes, and within 60 days give you a written determination. Here's how the product you're proposing to export is controlled for export purposes. So that's a good procedure to follow. Okay, so that's just an introduction, a little bit about ITAR and DDTC and those folks. And now let's see how Bureau of Industry and Security controls things for export. And for that, I'm going to pass the baton.
Today's webinar, we're going to focus on how the Export Administration Regulations, or the EAR, may apply to your items in the United States. Items could be commodities, software, or technology. How they may apply when you transfer these items out of the United States as an export, whether in a tangible or intangible transmission. And we're going to want to deal with your fundamental question, do I need an export license? Today, we're only going to be able to touch on the main parts of the EAR that you may want to look at as you make that determination. We're going to try to give you the EAR part and section references so that you can go back at your leisure and review those as you make your determination and you do your due diligence for your export. Word of advice we have as you use the EAR, we always recommend that you consult an online version, which is going to be the most up-to-date, or if you do use a hard copy, that you use our loosely finder version that you can keep up-to-date with published changes throughout the year by replacing the pages, so that you're sure you're dealing with the current regulations when you make your decision. Now, our agency website is due for a refresh, so as you look at our web pages, please keep in mind that these are slated to change soon. But the information on this page, which we currently call the Exporter Portal, is going to remain key if you're new to exporting, and we recommend it to you. We expect that these basic categories of information are going to be available on our website when it is redesigned, and you're going to be able to navigate to them. And we do, by the way, recommend that you navigate to topics that you want to access from our homepage rather than by typing a keyword into your internet search engine, so that you don't land on archived information that may be out of date, but that is still on the web and that may come up first.